Good morning, everyone. I hope you're doing well today. Just wanted to let you know that I have an interview to show you. And this time it's not me interviewing somebody, it's the media interviewing Angry Astronaut. So, very excited about this. It was the Cornwall Channel Limited who decided to interview me, was interested in what I was doing, poking around in Spaceport, Cornwall, wanted to learn more about what I do, but also learn more about spaceflight in general and why it's so important, not only to Britain, but to the world. So I want to express my deepest appreciations to Shane over at the Cornwall channel and to encourage all of you to subscribe to his YouTube channel and also to follow him on Facebook, where he has the most followers, and all of that is in the description. Please subscribe to his channel. And once again, let's go ahead and move on to a very professional interview, by the way, very professionally produced, much better than anything I ever put out on the Cornwall channel.
So you are watching another episode of Shane Solomon Meets, brought to you by the Cornwall Channel. I'm your host, Shane Solomon, and today, I'm excited about this, I'm meeting the Angry Astronaut. So that's not your real name, but what a cracking name for a YouTube channel. I'm joined by Jordan, right? Welcome, first of all, to the studio, and of course, the United Kingdom.
Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
So Jordan, we met recently at a social evening with the wonderful Spaceport Cornwall and Virgin Orbit team. Now, your journey, I've watched you, you're close, as we're recording this, to 90,000 subscribers on YouTube. Now, where does this even start from you? You know, the Angry Astronaut, where does it come from?
Well, I watched a lot of YouTube's space coverage, and I realized that I could do what a lot of these other folks were doing, except I needed a different take. Obviously, if I did what everybody else was doing, might be able to make it work, might not. Duplicating somebody else's work is never a solution. So instead, I found that when people are covering spaceflight, especially media personalities, they never really get rude about it, because it's all about, ooh, space, isn't this amazing what you're doing and all that, which of course it is. But, not everybody is doing a perfect job. As a matter of fact, some people are doing a really wretched job of things. And so I decided, if I'm the Angry Astronaut and I become more critical, I do critical editorials of things that are messed up in spaceflight, then they might draw some attention. It took a little while. I was about 700 subscribers. There's a fellow in Yorkshire who called me up, and he had helped build other YouTube channels in the past. He said, "You have real potential here." And I said, "Sure, I'd be happy to work together with you." And all of a sudden I was at 10,000 subscribers and 20, and it just kind of took off from there.
And what was you doing before that then?
Prior to that, I raised money for a charity for 7 years. And prior to that, I spent 20 years in corporate sales, selling telecommunications and broadband to companies. So nothing at all to do with spaceflight.
And have you been used to working a camera then? Because if anyone's not checked out your YouTube channel, you produce it yourself. You don't have the luxury like I have a J. You don't have a J. Probably a good thing. He's mega expensive, but well worth it. So you do all your stuff yourself. So was you using cameras before this? Obviously everyone takes a picture, but, and sound and microphones and all this sort of stuff.
A lot of it had to be self-taught. I mean, my brother is a media expert, but he lives in Colorado, about 2,000 miles away from me. So there's only so much he could do. And my father had done some photography in his life as a hobby and such. But no, as far as media's production is concerned, I've been pretty much playing it by ear.
Now, I'm really excited about what's happening here in Cornwall right now. And I want to do a massive shout out to the team at Spaceport Cornwall, because Melissa Thorpe there, and even their PR team, Jess Ratty and Georgia, they're doing a wonderful job on what you described to me in the green room as quite a small budget for space, right?
Yeah, I mean, everything that they've done at Spaceport Cornwall has been done for a few £1 million. I mean, from an American perspective, it's unbelievable. I mean, if we take, for example, Jeff Bezos's company, Blue Origin, who they sent up William Shatner to suborbital space not that long ago, that sort of thing. That company receives an infusion of $1 billion a year from Jeff every single year. If any of the European launch providers or spaceflight companies that I talk talked to, if any of them got that kind of money, what they could do would be amazing. I mean, really surpassing anything that's ever been done in Europe before. But they don't have that kind of funding. And so therefore, they have to make do with what they have. And they've still accomplished amazing things.
And what does this mean right now for Cornwall and for the UK and for Europe, for what's going on right now?
I can't overstate the importance of what's happening here. This is the first commercial orbital launch from Western Europe, period. In the past, even though many, many satellites are manufactured in this country and in Europe in general, instead, everything is shipped to my country. And so as a result, you have satellites being shipped at great expense and sometimes very, very sensitive equipment going overseas. On top of that, you also have the expense of sending all of the technicians, all of the security that these satellites sometimes require. All of this stuff has to be sent over to the United States, not only in terms of a great expense, but also a great cost in terms of greenhouse gases and damage to the environment. All of that can be bypassed if you launch things out of here. And that is what you guys are doing. It's impressive. And this is the beginning of something very important.
That is amazing. And I can feel the passion there, right? And that statement alone has just got over to me how important it is and all the kind of news I've heard about it before. Not that I'm saying that the news that's coming out of the spaceport, but sometimes you just don't hear it because it's locals, it's people you know. But that was a very powerful kind of explanation there, and I can see why you're so passionate about it. So how long are you here for? I mean, it's great to have your company. So how long are you in Cornwall for?
I've almost been in the UK for 2 months at this point. There's a lot happening spaceflight-wise here in addition to what's happening in Cornwall. We have Saxavord and Shetland, and they are building what I foresee is going to be the second busiest spaceport on the planet next to Cape Canaveral. They have 3 launch pads now that they'll have done within the next 60 days or so, 5 launch pads soon, 7 launch providers, and a cadence of 30 rockets per year. 30 launches every 10 days. You'll be launching a rocket out of Shetland. It will be completely transformative to the whole spaceflight environment here in Britain. So I've been here for nearly 2 months, and I was planning on going home soon, but I talked to my viewers. My viewers gave me another infusion of cash yesterday to stay over a year longer. To my great surprise, the economy's bad right now. I certainly didn't want them to give me money unless they really wanted me to stay here, but they did. And it was very, very moving.
Well, I saw a part of that last night, and I was like, wow, what a wonderful subscriber base and following you have. And your gratitude always comes across. I've only known you a few days, really, but I can see that gratitude coming across. And I guess you need that with a YouTube channel. When you reach the numbers that you do, and you can't do all this for free. It does take, travel costs, everything, the cost of living and everything. But the gratitude to the subscriber must be huge from you.
Well, right now it's especially important because with the economy the way it is, YouTube revenues are down by 30%. So really, I would much prefer to take Google's money than theirs.
Yes.
But, Google's really left me with no choice right now because of the state of things. But really, what I'm looking for more than anything else right now is just subscribers. Then those cost nothing.
Sure.
Because the more people who watch my channel, the less outside support I need, because then I just get the money from Google.
That's right, from the kind of advertising revenue that gets fed to us before. And I was watching your stuff that, you just can't even skip it. So that's great. The thing is, as a viewer now, you're getting this content for free. So you have to put up with a few ads. So what, And sometimes the ads are quite bespoke to you as a viewer. So I think it's a great thing. So what next for you? I mean, apart from staying here in Cornwall for a little bit longer, Shetland.
Yeah. Probably not back to Shetland for a while, although if ABL, an American launch provider, if they do indeed launch when they're planning to, they'll be launching the first quarter of next year. So I may very well be returning to Shetland sometime soon for that. But right now it's focusing pretty much exclusively on what's happening here to try to get more interviews with more Virgin Orbit people. Haven't had as many of those. I've interviewed lots of people who are providing the satellites. And if I may also emphasize the importance importance of the cargo that's being carried on this rocket.
Please.
This isn't just some demonstration launch or something like that. They're carrying a couple of British military satellites. They're carrying the first Dutch military satellite in the history of that country. But on top of that, they also have a maritime reconnaissance satellite. This keeps an eye on any maritime traffic that's like traveling without transponders, traveling with inappropriate communication. In other words, people who are almost certainly up to no good.
Correct.
They can do it anywhere in the world, and they can notify the local authorities within 15 minutes. What this means is that piracy, which is a real problem off the coasts of Malaysia and Somalia, things like that, it really helps to control that. Illegal fishing in communities that just cannot afford it. You know, you have big commercial organizations coming into their fishing grounds, stealing their fish from them, that sort of thing. I mean, it means a lot. And then finally, Space Forge. This is one of the things I'm the most excited about, manufacturing things in space in microgravity on reusable satellites instead of on a space station. Much less expensive, much more efficient if the satellites are completely reusable, which they are, and you can produce all sorts of amazing things, new types of alloys and other things for our technology and our civilization, but most excitedly, 3D printed organs. So let's say, for example, you just want a heart for the future, or kidneys or something. If you have a history of kidney problems in your family, they could manufacture those for you in microgravity up in orbit and then keep them on ice for you for the future. We could eliminate the need for organ banks in the world with this kind of technology.
Are you for real?
I am for real. And they're trying to do it here, but unfortunately, when you try to do that in gravity and in a normal atmosphere, it just ends up in a puddle at the bottom of the petri dish. But in microgravity, you can manipulate the biological material and print it out much, much more efficiently. So yeah, I mean, it's here. That technology is definitely here, and the potential to do that sort of thing can certainly doable within the next decade or so.
That blows my mind, what you've just said.
Crazy, isn't it? Yeah.
I mean, my mind's always open to possibility, but that is just something else from a film.
Yeah.
Sorry, what was you going to say?
It seems like sci-fi. Yeah,
it does.
But it isn't.
One thing that surprised me, I did watch one of the videos about the kind of, the satellite that's going to be able to monitor maritime, piracy and all the rest of it. And I was surprised actually how small these satellites are in terms. I don't know how big I was expecting them to be, but they're quite small, these satellites, really, I think.
Yeah, and that's a recent breakthrough. They're called small sats, CubeSats, microsats, etc. CubeSats, of course, are the smallest. They're measured in what are called U's, 3U satellite, 6U, etc. All of them are maybe the size of a shoebox. It might be a little bit bigger than that. But what they can accomplish, the optics that you can put on those satellites today compared to what it used to be 20, 30 years ago, I mean, it's just orders of magnitude better. And so what they can accomplish with just a little bitty payload. And that's why a rocket that only carries 300 or 500 kilograms worth of payload, like the one that's flying out of Cornwall, can accomplish so much.
Now, let's talk about space in general. Are we the only ones in space, humans and things like that? People, what's your thoughts on that? I mean, do you ever touch on this or not?
I do. There's no question that we're not alone, but do I believe that we're being visited by UFOs, that sort of thing? No, I don't think there's any tangible visual evidence that we can study in detail that indicates that. Who knows? Maybe it's happened, and there seems to be more and more evidence from the military side of things saying that perhaps, but once again, they're not releasing any of that stuff for NASA to examine. So without tangible visual evidence that we can really look at closely, you can't say. So,
no, for sure.
Right now, that's not something I deal with. I do, however, deal with other things that we do have more visual evidence on, but I'd be getting into a pretty deep conversation.
Sure, exactly. We'll save that for another time, John. We'll save that another time. The government, the UK government, they could do more, right?
Far more. And that's one thing. I mean, I want to be clear about one thing. I'm not here to tell the British how to run their government, okay? Not at all. But one thing I can tell you is I know what spaceflight does for my country, and I know how much money we spend on it. And the fact of the matter is we spend more than 25 times as much money on NASA as Britain spends on their own space agency. And of course, you might say, well, the economy isn't, big enough or whatever. France has the same size economy as the UK does and spends more than 3 times as much money on space flight as the UK does. And, we talk, well, we're in a state of economic crisis. We can't do anything about it right now. Now is the time to do something about it. 45,000 spaceflight related jobs exist in this country on so little money. Can you imagine how many more jobs would be created if Britain were to invest £3 billion a year instead of 1, which would still be a smaller amount per capita than the US spends on spaceflight, but it would create so many jobs in a time of economic crisis when you really need them.
And I was going to touch on that. The kind of career opportunities within space is probably now better than it's ever been, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And every type of job, it doesn't necessarily need to be, engineering or astronauts or any of that sort of thing. I mean, any spaceflight organization also needs administrators, accountants, anything you can think of, they're going to need that kind of job. So, and Cornwall, they're going to be bringing more of that in there. When this mission is a success, then yeah, it's going to open up new doors. And that's what makes this mission so important and why it needs to succeed. In America, we have failure sometimes, and everybody does, and we just write it off, move on. This is a very important mission for Britain. I'm not confident that if we have, if we do have an anomaly with this flight, if something goes wrong with it, I'm not sure if, the British government will invest more money to try again. And they need to if that happens. But really what would be simpler if it just succeeds the first time around. And I'll tell you, I think Virgin Orbit, you couldn't ask for a better company to do it.
I was going to say, how confident are you, do you think, that this first mission will go well?
I'm never going to say 100%.
Sure.
I'd give it about 95%. I'm not even going to say 99.
Sure.
Because space flight, you never know.
It's really science as well. At the end of the day, it's a bit like a computer system or a mobile phone. It can always fail. It's great when it's working, but even your top kind of engineers, your Apples of the world and things like that.
Right.
Things can still go wrong, can't they?
Virgin Orbit has only had one failure, and that was on their first launch. After that, they have done flawlessly, and they have put a huge amount of TLC into this rocket. So I would be very, very surprised if something went wrong with it, but it's space. Anything can happen.
It is space. Now, is there anything that you'd like to mention that I've not prompted you about in our kind of chat today? Is there anything you really want to get out there that we've not talked about?
I just want to again emphasize to everyone in Cornwall and anyone who watches this channel just how important this is. There's a lot of naysayers who talk negatively about space flight, about the greenhouse gases it creates, et cetera, et cetera. It causes less damage to the planet to launch things from here than it does to launch things from the United States, to launch European cargoes from the United States. And there are many, many other reasons. From an environmental standpoint, that space represents something better for the future of the planet, green-wise, than the other way around. It would take me too long to go into it, but all of that is, really important. So it's not just about jobs and economy. It's also about what's good for the planet. I'd be happy to talk to anybody about that, but if you want to watch what's happening here in Cornwall, especially in regards to this launch, I'm covering this very, very thoroughly. It's currently the most watched content about the subject on YouTube right now. Please tune in to The Angry Astronaut on YouTube and please subscribe.
Absolutely. That was what I was going to come back and say. It's almost like you read my mind. And it's exactly that. The content, in fact, I was showing Mike, one of our producers here this morning, your channel, and it's like, crikey, he really uploads a lot of content. There's so much content there. He was scrolling and scrolling and scrolling. So you are the Angry Astronaut. You're a wonderful man. Thank you I'm so glad our paths crossed. I'm so glad that you came here today so we can have this chat. But make sure you subscribe to the Angry Astronaut on YouTube. I'll make sure there's a link somewhere around this video, and we'll probably put it on the video as well. I was meant to say that I just want to show actually just a couple of shots of Cosmic Girl arriving into Newquay, Cornwall Airport last week, in fact. But just describe that feeling as that aircraft touched down on the runway.
Absolutely. I would very much like to explain just how that felt as it happened. I mean, it is, again, once again, the first commercial launch from Western Europe. Never, and once again, a big moment for Virgin Orbit too. They sell their services as in we can launch from anywhere. If you have an airport with just some basic logistical facilities in place, then we can launch your satellites from your country. You don't have to bring them all the way over, which means, obviously this mission needs to succeed. It is the most important mission they have ever undertaken. And all those thoughts are going through my head. And at the same time, Spaceport Cornwall had granted me the opportunity to film from the top of a double-decker bus over the fence. I mean, the most perfect spot I could have ever gotten. And I'm up there with Channel 4 and BBC and ITV and me. I mean, I don't even understand how that happened. All I know is that I'm very grateful for it.
Well, I reckon the BBC, Channel 4, and everyone else up there was lucky that they were there because you were there. My thanks, as always, to Jay, who's been producing for us today. And my thanks especially to Jess Ratty and the team at Halo PR for making this content actually happen, our mutual connection there, put this together. So for myself and the Angry Astronaut, thank you very much for your time. And make sure you subscribe to this man. We'll see you soon. Do you want to say goodbye?
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye now.
Stay angry about space.